We have control of fire. Welcome to the AntiClimactic Nonshow with your hosts, good morning, Cali. It is 9 a.m. in Los Angeles, high noon in New York, 5 o'clock in the evening in the UK. Top of the evening to you. Does anybody say that over there? Oh no, the Irish all say top of the morning to you. Every single Irishman I've heard. It is mandated by state law in the country of Ireland. No, of course it isn't. This is a factual show. We don't get into that kind of stuff, do we? You might have noticed already that the show is hipper, it's cooler, it's doper, because we have the music of Nico Garza in the house. He is actively producing art. On episode 15 of the AntiClimactic Nonshow, we're taking a look at the newspapers, just walked in the door. Nothing really big breaking, but in Paris, we have been talking, all week about the French and their situation, where, many tens of thousands of people now are supporting the Yellow Vest protesters. And France is the heart of protests since '68. And what's cool about it is they're regular people, and they're complaining about life becoming too expensive, and they're complaining about the inability to buy enough food at the end of the month, or pay the rent. And this is a problem that's happening all over the world, and in our highly capitalized society over here, we're not even able to protest that. Because if you say you're anti-capitalist, or if you try to suggest that you're a socialist, or dare I even say I'm a communist, I don't want any money at all, I want to share everything I have with everybody in my commune or community, oh my God, you're a nutbag over here. You're non-realistic. You're acting outside the normative behavior of the United States of America, which is capitalism in the free markets, which has now been corrupted and polluted and driven into a state where a very small percentage of the United States owns everything. And the vast majority of the United States are suffering to make it to the end of the month, just like those protesters in France. So when we talked about them this past week, it was exciting to me because what if we could mobilize in the United States? What if we were like we were in those weeks and months before the war in 2003? Or in the weeks and months of 1967 to 74 in the United States? Just because we've digitized and become internal and we've all thrown our headphones on like this and are passing through the world like this, doesn't mean we can't stop all that, pull everything off, look straight at the world and tell everybody, hey, wait a minute, this thing's going off the rails. The United States is going off the rails. That's what I would say. I've been here now, 49 years. I've been a citizen for 38 of those 49 years, and this is not the country I moved to. So it's about time we worked on it a little bit. I think if we could come up with some cool ways to protest in the new year, that would be great. Welcome, viewer. You are experiencing the AntiClimactic Nonshow with your hosts. And music today provided by Nico. And we are making collage. We're talking about the papers. We're beginning today talking a little bit about the protesters in France because they've done it every Saturday. They've had 4 of these attentats, is the French term for these protests, these demonstrations. Attentat is a terrorist act. That's a different thing. What's the term for these? They have a term for demonstrations over there. And they're about to have the 5th one because the government is not reacting. So now tomorrow, another Saturday in Paris, the police are expecting still more protests. People throughout France are with the protesters. They're agreeing that the situation has been too corporate protectionist. So it's kind of interesting to see that happen. Taking a look at Le Monde. Let's see what we got going on here. One of our methods on the show is to use Google Translate. So instead of reading the AP or the BBC or some paper from the West, we're going to take a look at Le Monde, the French paper, and we're going to use Google Translate. After an attack and some promises, an uncertain outcome for the Yellow Vests. Some have been convinced by Emmanuel Macron. Others promise to continue the movement before a new event in Paris. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah, the attack in Strasbourg was crazy. It reminded me of the attack in Mumbai on November 28th of 2008, was it? Groups of gunmen, 3 or 4 gunmen, just suddenly appeared from the train station and out of the ocean, it seemed like, and just started randomly going through Mumbai, gunning people down and bombing things until they were stopped. As a tactic, this is something that we've seen a few times from extremists, but it's unusual to see it in a major European city. I would say that is different. Let's take a look at the BBC, see what they're talking about. Cohen is just saying, so everything right now is the people who are coming out about Donald J. Trump are starting to say things that they had withheld because they thought DJT was going to protect them from, prosecution. Now they're making their plea bargains and they've been prosecuted, so they're spilling their guts. And one of them is his former attorney, and he's loudly saying that he was directed by Donald J. Trump to make the hush money payments to the porn star and the Playboy Playmate. And that's just obvious, as we were saying yesterday. That's obvious to everyone, right? I mean, Donald J. Trump doesn't do anything without it being from him. He's the guy who makes the decisions. And he's going to try to convince us that he didn't tell, he was like this, I didn't tell that guy to go pay hush money to this porn star. No way. There's no way any decision in Donald J. Trump's life happens without him knowing about it. So it is, it stretches believability, especially as Cohen starts to spill his guts, and that's what's happening today. We didn't talk about Theresa May not being the prime minister anymore of England, and that the way she went out, is... Brexit makes very weird kind of alliances that I'm starting to become more interested in. Like, for example, yesterday we were talking about... I'm not sure quite how to put this except in racial terms, and I hate racial... And you know what, Nico? I hate racial terms. Yeah. Because we're one race. Yeah. We're one race, right? We are one human race.
It's just an easy way to divide.
It's the most transparent, right? It's the easiest way. That's your point. It's the easiest way to divide people, right?
That's what I want.
All right. So then, here's what I'm running into, though. I'm running into the problem that I'm starting to have more feelings of white prejudice against white folks as racist or white supremacist things become more possible in our society. Okay? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, me too.
You're having a little bit of that too?
Oh, yeah.
And then I feel bad a little time, like, oh man, I shouldn't think that about these white folks. But then I'm like, no, wait a minute, I should think this about these white folks because they're the ones who have created the context within which we're existing, the 450 years of colonialism, which has brought us to the point of whatever the world is divided into being their authorship.
That's the division they want.
All right, so now we're in the problem of thinking of them as an us or an us and them, when in fact we're all the same us, but me wanting them among us to agree with me that they have done something that is about helping themselves more than other races that they have defined, right? They'll put themselves higher, okay? Now, one of the reasons this came up yesterday is because we were talking about the question of why does Trump exist as a protectionist agent for white supremacists in the United States right now, is what we were starting to discuss yesterday. And I feel like one of the things I was coming up against in this discussion was what I think of as facts that I can't per se substantiate because I haven't done the full research yet, but it seems transparently the case. I'll give you an example that my friend has a Polish wife, Okay? And she wasn't a citizen. And I have another friend here in town who has an Ecuadorian wife, or an El Salvadoran wife, another friend with an El Salvadoran wife. Each of them will have different entrances to the United States. The way, do you know what I'm talking about, Nico?
Yeah,
Like, being white and Polish, you're going to get in easier.
for sure.
See, he said for sure, right. We don't have stats for this right now because I haven't gone and looked this up, but I think it's fairly clear what's going on. The white majority, which, quote, founded the United States, right? And by founded here, we have a discrepancy because over the last 40 years, we've all educated ourselves to realize, wait a minute, they didn't found it. They committed genocide, invented slavery, and created a context in which everybody living here before them was heathens and savages. And we can use these other people who are just animals to build it how we want, and we can finally be free. This manifest destiny, this city on the hill, this place. All of that is born out of a supremacy of the white man who believes that they are better, who believes that they have evolved higher, that they are more civilized. When in fact, we believe now, at least I do, I can't speak for Nico, but this is what we were talking about when Oris was around visiting, that in fact it's the opposite. They were not the civilized of Europe who came here, they were the barbarians. They were the ones who denied God and king. Oh, I don't want to be ruled by this king. Oh, I hear there's land over there. I can just take it. I'm going to go over there and just take it. Well, I don't want to have this God dictate to me whatever. I hear over there you can just be whatever God you want. Okay, cool. So let's just go over there, take whatever land we want, and have whatever God we want, right? And that rationale is not a civilized rationale. It's a barbaric, savage, and conquering rationale. So it puts all of that into a suspect state. Now, let's flash forward. The whiteness, if you will, of the United States is changing. It's not going to stay white. Come on. It's becoming brown constantly by the internecine action of multiple different people from different places coming to the United States, right? You know what I'm talking about, Nico?
Yeah.
Like I have a, quote, white girlfriend, right, with a half-fee child, right? All these divisions that we talked about that are false. But anyway, the browning of America is an inevitability. But there is a power structure within white culture, okay, that does not want to cede power to this thing that they claim to have invented, freedom, and for everybody, and all men are created equal. They don't want to realize that when that's fully realized and they're minorities, this is going to be a problem. So what I'm thinking is that Trump represents the very last effort of those particular white supremacists to link, you with me, to link the whitest people over there, the Russians, the Polish. His wife is from what? Where some one of those former Eastern European countries, right? To link them with all the whites in the United States and those in the other places like Australia, the Five Eyes, as the English people call it, New Zealand, Australia, England, the UK, and Canada, right? So now we're going to have a world divided into those countries and everybody else, and they're going to be the place where the majority of the time the message that the white culture has civilized mankind and pushed mankind forward is going to be the predominant attitude. In other words, if you come here and you're a good immigrant, right, then you don't start doing what you and I are doing, Nico. You don't start looking into things. You say, well, no, well, America's the greatest country in the world. That's what you keep saying. You keep saying, what do you mean? All the greatest inventions came from here, and skyscrapers are here. Your job when you're here is to constantly tell it it's the best country in the world when you're an immigrant, right? Whereas if you start to diverge from that, you're told, oh, you get to say that because we have free speech. Yeah, but you're marginalized.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to be invited on Fox and Friends or on... right, or on MSNBC, to talk openly about how you believe that white supremacy is an anti-civil thing. No one's going to welcome you to do that, right? But these aren't racist thoughts, are they? They're about power, I think.
Yeah, it all comes down to that.
Doesn't it?
They want to have more power than us. They want to show that.
Yeah, and I think that we have a real issue that in this country we're not discussing that much. We're leaving race in a place where it's allowed to fester instead of shining light on it so we can discuss it openly. And that's something I would like to see stop. And I do believe that this Russia connection between, well, DJT to me is just the face of it, but between the conservatives in the United States, particularly white male conservatives in the United States, who are trying to link with the Russians, as has been shown by the arrest yesterday, as we discussed, of this woman. She came from Russia. She was actively conducting espionage. She was working with conservative white people and the NRA, the National Rifle Association, to make connections between Russians and those people in the United States. And when I project forward to whether or not there's going to be revolution in the U.S., I never thought when I was younger that I would be afraid of revolution by white folk. You know what I mean? I never had that idea.
Yeah, that's weird.
But now it suddenly feels like you make them feel even a little bit like they're going to be in the minority, and they have the open right to have a revolution to put down, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it's definitely happening. It's real. Like, it's like, yeah, once you say how they get the minority, or they feel like minority, they automatically want to fucking fight back. But we get, we get like a bad rap for that.
We're uppity,
Yeah.
right? We're called uppity immigrants, right?
Yeah.
In other words, so there's something. So yeah, there's a collision here. There's some kind of weird collision going on between races, quote unquote, that have been defined by one of them, the white race, if you will, as defined the others. So we're in a state now where I'd like to be able to discuss more of that. I don't know how to do it. I wish I was better trained at that. I think it'd be cool to be, like, race relations should be a subject matter. Now, not in schools, because if we're agreeing we want to erase race, E-R-A-C-E, the notion of race, then this is a struggle. Right there is even a struggle. Do you know the piece by Amir Rahman?
No.
Well, we're going to play that today because I never get to... I've shared this for about 6 years now, and it's one of my favorite sort of things. Let me see if I can do this. How can I do this? I can do it with... oh, wait, you can do it with your phone. You're going from your phone, right?
Yeah.
Hey, do you want the password for this place?
No, that's cool.
Are you cool with what you got?
Yeah.
So if you go to YouTube, put in Amir Rahman, and I'm going to make him do it so you all can do it too when you're watching this. Amer Rahman. Put in reverse racism. Amir Rahman, reverse racism, YouTube, and you can go ahead and hit play, and we're just going to listen to this together, folks. And you can turn it up. Yeah, that's it. Purple suit. Yeah, purple suit. You crank it up.
People don't like my comedy. A lot of white people don't like my comedy. A lot of white people say this to me. Hey, Amir. Hey. You get on stage. You make your jokes about white people. You say white people this, white people that. What if I did something like that? Huh? What if I got on stage and I said, yeah, black people are like this. Muslims are like that. You'd probably call me a racist, wouldn't you? And I say, yeah, I would. Yeah, you should never do that. That's bad for your health. They're like, well, you do that, Amir. You do that. You get on stage, make jokes about white people. Don't you think that's a kind of racism? Don't you think that's... Dun, dun, dun. Reverse racism. I said, no, I don't think that's reverse racism. Not because I think reverse racism doesn't exist, right? If you ask some black and brown people, they'll tell you flat out, there is no such thing as reverse racism. I don't agree with that. I think there is such a thing as reverse racism, and I could be a reverse racist if I wanted to. All I would need would be a time machine, right? And what I'd do is I'd get in my time machine, I'd go back in time to before Europe colonized the world, right? And I'd convince the leaders of Africa, Asia, the Middle East, Central and South America to invade and colonize Europe, right? Just occupy them, steal their land and resources, set up some kind of, like, I don't know, trans-Asian slave trade where we exported white people to work on giant rice plantations in China. just ruin Europe over the course of a couple of centuries, so all their descendants would want to migrate out and live in the places where black and brown people come from. But of course, in that time, I've made sure I set up systems that privilege black and brown people at every conceivable social, political, and economic opportunity. White people would never have any hope of real self-determination. Because every couple of decades make up some fake war as an excuse to go and bomb them back to the Stone Age and say it's for their own good because their culture's inferior, and then just for kicks, subject white people to colored people's standards of beauty, so they end up hating the color of their own skin, eyes, and hair. If, after hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of that, I got on stage at a comedy show and said, hey, what's the deal with white people? Why can't they dance? That would be reverse racism.
That would be reverse racism. That's Amir Rahman from Fear of a Brown Planet on reverse racism. And I've played it for people for years. I think it went up on the net 2012 maybe. And he talks about how he was going to quit comedy. He and a group, he's an Australian. And although I don't think he'd identify as an Australian. One of his jokes is about how the Australian flag looks like it was made on MS Word. His whole thing is that it looks like they just took MS Word and took the American flag, I mean the British flag and the American flag, and they're like. But he was about to quit doing comedy when he did that piece on stage, and it was filmed and put on YouTube, and it ended up becoming an internationally viewed bit that I play for people all the time, and I hope that others, I hope you checked it out, and you do as well. But this idea, right, that the only way you could be reverse racist against the white colonizers would be to do everything they've done to us.
That's reverse racism.
Is the only way, right, by definition, because we're functioning as people who have been suppressed by that. And the argument of the contemporary white conservative is, no, look at you. You were educated in American schools. You speak the way you do because of everything now. There's no more need for affirmative action. I mean, you're equal. Right? And on the face, that sounds, I don't know, how does that sound to you, would be the question on the face of it. My parents were excellent immigrants. I've said that before on this program. They're unimpeachable. Every white, conservative, right-wing person in this town, which is filled with them, by the way, admired and loved my parents for being educators and teachers and good immigrants, and who behaved and who never spoke ill in public about certain things, and who looked the other way when they saw the open racism against the Mexican Americans here, for example, or Latinos. My parents didn't participate in that. They were too busy being good immigrants. They weren't going to rock the boat. And I think that there's something oppressive about that is not discussed in American culture. We talked about the Soviet culture being oppressive when I was young, right? Soviet Union was all in black and white and gray, and their people had to stand in line for hours just to get anything, and their world was miserable, and our world was full of color and joy and afros and roller skates and disco and freedom. But it's not really the truth, is it? Any poet who feels oppressed or felt oppressed in Soviet Russia would feel, I think, equal. Even though I'm not in a gulag, I think that intellectually it's possible to feel equal to them in terms of our inability to communicate just basic human truths to the society we live in. Because the loud, overbearing message is, we're the best in the world, keep on making money, make money, do capitalism is the best thing in the world, you're free, freedom is capitalism, let's go kill those Muslims, anything we need to kill. We'll go kill because we're the freest and we got to give the freedom to people. That loud, vast, broad, and diverse voice is all of production. And when I go to look at a website that has a bunch of TV shows like Netflix or Hulu or something, or a website with a bunch of movies on it, right? I don't know if you've had this, Nico, but they put up little little blocks like that. You can see it as a grid view.
Yeah.
And have you ever done this where you go there and, hey, I think I'll watch a movie, and you throw them up, and there's not one person of color in any of the grid view.
Yeah.
Every single program, and you can go pages like this, and there's not even one. It's just white. This white guy and that white guy having a problem. This white girl and that white guy. That's white girl and this white guy. This white guy. And after a while, you start realizing all I'm doing is watching stuff by them about them. They've now succeeded in making me feel like there are them that exist.
How long has it been like that, though?
Well, okay, now, as long as it's existed, right? That's the point. We're living in their. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Just like that's a metaphor. That page is a metaphor for what we're actually living in. We're living in a thing where everything is dictated by their stories to each other, and nothing nothing that can threaten it, that can shake it.
Right.
James Baldwin, the novelist, said when he was interviewed by the Paris Review in 1940, James Baldwin said, "The white reader doesn't want to get too close." He was talking as a novelist. Okay? And he said the white reader doesn't want to get too close. And I found that really fascinating. I'm not wholly sure I know what it means. Okay? I'm going to find the exact quote because it's really, I used it in a short story that I wrote many years ago. I'm going to find the quote itself. James Baldwin. It was in the Paris Review. I read it years ago. Interview. It was at the end, Art of Fiction number 78. It was the end of a very successful period for him after a life of not having that success and of a degree of oppression. He had just gone to Europe and he had just been he had just received the National Book Award in the United States. He's the first black man to receive the National Book Award for The Invisible Man, right? No, not Invisible Man. I forget. Hang on, let's figure this out. Notes of a Native Son? No. I'm trying to remember what Baldwin won the National Book Award for. Okay, you can turn this up too. Music today by Nico. You're the first guest, man.
Really? Oh shit.
What do you think?
It's fun. Cool. Just cutting it up, chopping it up, literally, and chopping it up.
I'm gonna try to find this.
That's what it's all about.
Well, feel free to bring up any topics of your own. It is different.
Having someone here
It's nice, yeah.
makes your job easier.
Well, it's boring. It's a boring show. If I'm
not
just
a
in
show.
here, right? It's a boring non-show. It's an anticlimactic, boring non-show. If when I'm in here just rapping at the thing. Excuse me. He talks about the white reader, though, and that I think is what I was trying to get at. That idea that the reader. Okay, now again, we're using the novel here as a deal, but it could be the movies today, or it could be a rap song, or it could be anything, right? He's saying that the white listener is listening differently to that rap song. He's saying that the white viewer is looking differently at that movie. And he's saying it because he, as a black and man in America in the 1940s, is communicating this sort of larger issue that we were touching on. I think you and I were touching on how we're living in a thing that's clearly... It's like if you're in a tank and you're trying to tell the person outside the tank, hey, this is a tank.
Yeah.
And they're going, why are you complaining, right?
Yeah.
Right? No, this is a tank, right? So you have to tell them you're outside the tank. So that differentiation has to be made.
Mm-hmm.
It's not racial. You're not outside the tank for any reason except that your skin is light colored, right? But it's not racial. It's not your race that makes you outside the tank. It's a thing you've identified that's transient, that you described as the most superficial, right? That is what's governing the rule about who's in the tank and who is outside the tank, I think. I want to find this James Baldwin quote. I'm going to find it from the story that I wrote A lot of times I write fiction and I stick stuff in it just so I can know where it is later on when I want to remember it. You know?
Oh, like the piece.
Yeah.
That's pretty smart.
Well, I don't.
Put together, organize a little bit.
Yeah, but I think it bores people who are trying to read what I'm writing because there's these long, stupid quotes in there about stuff. I'm trying to find this thing. It was in. Oh, it's not in this one. I know what it's in. It's in a story I haven't published. It's called. Let's see if I can find it. Feel free to turn that up, man. I'm not sure it scans if you. It's in the bookstore. That's where it is. Oh, that's why I was getting it wrong. It wasn't James Baldwin. It was Ralph Ellison. It was Ralph Ellison, who did write Invisible Man.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just going to read this to you. In the summer of 1954, when he was 40, 2 years after winning the National Book Award in the United States for his first novel, Invisible Man, Ralph Ellison sat at a Café de la Mairie du 6 in post-war Paris with a group of expatriated Americans. He granted an interview to the Paris Review. It was his last day in Europe, at the end of a well-traveled summer. He would return to the United States the next morning. Quote, "I suspect," Ellison said, "that all the agony that goes into writing is born precisely because the writer longs for acceptance. But it must be acceptance on his own terms." Close quote. Ellison, at perhaps the height of his freedom, think about that as a black man, American black man, at perhaps the height of his freedom, embraced by some intellectuals and academics in New York and Europe at least, critically assured of his place in any history of the American novel. 1 second, I gotta sneeze. Lolita would not appear until the following spring, but, you know, this book is going to live... Oh, man, had a sneeze in there. He's going to live forever, right? The Invisible Man will be read forever.
Oh, yeah.
He's at his peak. In terms of freedom as a person of color, he's at his peak. He's famous. He's known. His book's going to live forever. He's just won the National Book Award. He's in Paris, so he's away from here. And again, like we talked about on the show on other days, I always feel more free when I'm outside the United States. Point. I've said that since 1978. Every time I leave the country, I feel more free.
Yep.
Now, that might be because I'm traveling as an American with a passport in these countries and blah, 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 but plenty of times, no one there, I have lived and functioned in plenty of places where I'm acting like an American. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's a weird thing that that's the case, but I certainly know that if I was in Paris and I was being interviewed by the Paris Review, that would be my chance to finally say something I really mean, because I would know there's no cops or FBI or somebody who's going to come haunt me for it. Okay? And that is Ellison's position, I'm arguing, when he says this. Quote, "The Negro novelist draws his blackness too tightly around him when he sits down to write. That's what the anti-protest critics believe." When he says anti-protest critics here, he's talking about basically the right-wing conservatives. And this is, you know, you can equate the anti-protest critics with people who don't want, women's equality or black equality or, rights for others. So he says, "The Negro novelist draws his blackness too tightly around him when he sits down to write. That's what the anti-protest critics believe. But perhaps the white reader draws his whiteness around himself when he sits down to read. He doesn't want to identify himself with Negro characters in terms of our immediate racial and social situation. Though, on a deeper human level, identification can become compelling when the situation is revealed artistically." Quote. The interviewers describe the author as, quote, "overwhelming. To listen to him is rather like sitting in the back of a huge hall and feeling the lecturer's faraway eyes staring directly into your own." Close quote. Ellison, facing the literary attention of Europe and Euro-America, was direct and serious. Quote, "The white reader doesn't want to get too close. not even in an imaginary recreation of society. Negro writers have felt this, and it has led to much of our failure. Close quote. So I think that's the first time, Nico, that someone introduced this idea that the way they're reading what we're writing, or the way they're looking at our art, it's the first place I've ever heard someone discuss that. That's pretty crazy to think about.
When was it?
Maybe 60 years ago? No, maybe a little more.
Damn.
It's the summer of 1954, so yeah, about 70, 80 years ago.
Yeah, that's.
Right, but not even until then has white culture, if you will, for lack of a better term at this moment, even acknowledged something that would allow Amir Rahman to be able to make a comedy piece like that.
Yeah.
60, 70 years it's taken to get that far in the discussion.
Long ass.
Yeah. I mean, that's 2 right? My son is 16, I'm 51, that's 2, possibly 3 generations it's taken, even in the modern era of information, right? Which I find, I don't know, man. We gotta, now that we have all this tech and all this digital culture, we should be able to make change like that, right? But we're not. And who's in the way? Oh, wait, it's this guy going, but wait, my white constitution says that I have to be able to have this, right? Like, this is how they're standing right now. And they got Trump up front.
Oh,
they're like,
yeah.
I don't want to let go of nothing, right? Well, wake up, buddy. It's been illegal. It's been wrong, morally, ethically, and your power is false, made from a brutal side of your yourself and your culture that believes it's okay to oppress others. All right, break from me talking. Nico's going to play some music, and I'm going to go over here and do the thing that raises me. I also want to play this tune for you, Nico.
What is it?
I was going to do it at the 20-minute mark, but I forgot. This Bob Dylan tune.
Oh, yeah. I know that one.
The show's so much better with you here. Oh. Taylor's around here somewhere too. I don't know what happened to it. I'm so glad I started getting these, by the way, which is what's making it so much more comfortable to be able to use that
What kind of
inside. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, what kind of
This is a sage and citrus one. It's so mellow, bro.
Yeah, that sounds.
It's so freaking mellow. Hey, you want some canvas to mount that on? Look over there. There's that. That's not being used for anything. It's that square one. Look at that square one. Yeah. Look at your color palette. You can also tweak it. You can also paint that if you want.
I'm keep fucking chopping shit down.
I just meant size-wise. If you want, you can mount on that. The active production of art is happening today in Studio B23. That's exciting. I always like when that happens. Oh, and you know what I found today, Nico? That disc right there, which looks like nothing. I just wrote that on it, but which is just a white blank disc. I was like, huh. And I went and I popped it in, and that is a single image of extremely high quality. It's scanned at the highest possible quality of a Banksy piece that was only alive for 2 weeks and then was erased, and I'm the only person who has any evidence.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it from 2002?
It is from 2002. How'd you know that?
You told me about that show you were in.
Oh, I met Banksy. I told Nico about the time I met Banksy. I don't tell many people that. I'm not going to tell you guys that, as a matter of fact. People who know it know it. No, but this is, yeah, it's crazy. I have this photograph, and there's a print of it, and I communicated with his pal, and I was like, look, what am I supposed to do with this? I want to sell it. And he wrote back, this was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that guy was like, Banksy doesn't want that out right now. I'm like, okay, well then what am I supposed to do with this? You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to give it back to you. You were dumb enough to do this piece that was not going to last at a critical time in American history. It's badass. You didn't photograph it because you left. I have the only image of it. What is that worth, Nico, given what's going on right now?
Yeah, seriously.
So then in the meanwhile, he goes and he shreds a piece.
Dude, yeah,
His response is, it's worth zero. All art is worth zero. Except he's not making zero. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
so there's this kind of complicated.
That shit was funny.
Yeah, it's a cool piece.
About that?
I loved it. What do you mean, man? Dude, half the stuff I'm doing here is using currency
Yeah.
to explain how much I think that is an act that's important. The reduction of the potency of currency and of money in terms of value is, to me, way, way motivating. If I can do anything to make any of you think that making money is less important, if I can do anything to make any of you think that material value, the type of shirt you're wearing or shoes you're wearing, having a higher material in terms of cash value, if I could do anything to cripple that in my life on this earth, I would. You know? Because we're living in the absolute worst expansion of that.
Oh, for sure.
We're living in a hyper-capitalized society that dictates to us when someone is of value based on their material wealth. So I loved that. But I don't know what to do with this thing, man.
I see it.
I know you do. You can't.
I see it real bad.
You can't. You can see the print. The print is in a gallery in Los Angeles. It's in a closet. It's mounted, and it has a light. You can go to the gallery. You can pay my friend Jason, I think he said $2 or something. And you can go in the closet, and you can put the light on, and you can look at it. That's how I have it set up now, Banksy, if you ever see this. I don't know what else to do. I don't want this thing anymore. I can't put it up here. You understand that? I could not put the piece up here if I wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So, and it's framed. It's huge. Right? Because it's a billboard. It's a photograph of a billboard, man. So the piece itself is like 4 feet by 2.5.
What's it called?
It has no name. What's it called?
They said it was up.
No, it's in a closet in a gallery.
Oh, in a closet.
Right?
Yeah.
The gallery's called, you mean?
No, the piece, but it's in a closet.
It's a photograph of a Banksy. I mean, how am I going to title it? Well, I can't title it with Banksy's.
No, I thought, like, it might have been named on it.
Hey, pull that Civil War thing down. It's just tape it there. You can get it out of the way.
What?
It's by your knees, so you're not
Oh.
I feel bad it's in your way. Just pull it down, I'm saying. You can unpeel the sticker at the end. I'll move it somewhere else. I never have anybody else in here until I work at that desk.
It's all good.
The AntiClimactic Nonshow is brought to you by nobody and maintains non-monetization on YouTube. The AntiClimactic Nonshow is not like any other YouTube channel because we have no interest at all in monetizing the channel. Which is why I'm kind of mad at you, Van Morrison, because one of the reasons why the other people let us play whatever songs we want, and they let us know that they're aware, but they say, okay, well, you don't have to do anything now, but you make money, we're going to contact you. That's their methodology, right? We're not going to make any money. This show's sole intent is to communicate ideas. Oh, see, I said it again. The non-show. The sole intent of this non-show is to communicate ideas. It would be awesome to have millions of viewers and not make one penny. That to me would be tremendous success. If I had 30,000 viewers in London, where it is 5:45 in the evening, 5:45 in the evening in London. If I had 10,000 viewers there, 10,000 viewers in Mumbai, where it is, 11:15 at night. If at 4:45 in the morning, 4:45 in the morning, I had 10,000 viewers in Australia, and we were talking about real ideas globally, and we were being honest. Again, the non-show aspect here applies to, it's not a show, it's meant to be real production, in so much as that's possible. But if we had 10,000 viewers in each of those places, 10,000 in Tokyo, where it's 2:45 in the morning, 10,000 in Brazil, and we were all talking through this means of a program like this, the AntiClimactic Nonshow, that is the sole goal of this piece of art. It is an anti-capitalist manifestation. I used to say anti-capitalist all the time, Nico, but I don't say that anymore because I realized it's impossible to do that. Even .orgs have to function with the capacity of money coming in and out because of the rules of the game. So now I say counter-capitalist.
Yeah,
Is that good?
Yeah, I feel like it'll make people less uncomfortable.
Counter-capitalist.
Saying anti-capitalist freaks people out, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this is a counter-capitalist program. You know what I mean? It doesn't have a goal of making money. Even saying that aloud freaks people out. Seriously. If I say to people, no, you can't see that, no, you can't buy it, it freaks them out. Right? Because everything supposedly has a price. But that's not true when you're a real artist, which took me a long time to get here, but that's not true. There are many people who cannot buy things that are in this room. They're not allowed to buy them. I will destroy them before giving them to them. That is what Banksy effectively achieved with his piece, right?
Right in front of all those rich people.
Yeah, it was cool. I give that credit. You know what I mean? Yeah, I give it credit. But I want to know what to do with that. I'm so glad I found that disc today.
Where'd you find it? Just like...
Well, behind those, there's a bunch of audio gear. So I did audio for decades. Like, I have collected tons of found sound. And it was in there, and I was going to put it on as music. I was like, hey, this might be something I produced, you know? So I went to put it on, and it wasn't music. It was a digital file. And then I was like, oh, shit, that's where that is, you know?
You forgot about it until now?
I knew it was somewhere, but I can't do anything with it, man. I really can't do anything except this. What we're doing right now, talking about this particular Banksy piece, is the most I can do with this Banksy piece, man.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest situation in the world. I really don't know how to even think about the situation.
That's the funny shit.
I gotta go to FedEx today, too.
For what?
I gotta mail this thing to my dad to get this this device broke and he's sent back to the company.
I don't like fucking knowing stuff.
Yeah, but that's life, man. Life is mailing stuff.
Lots of it. Lots of shit.
Well, here has the studio has a FedEx account, so I can just use the FedEx account. I could technically call them and make them come pick it up, but it's not boxed.
Oh, weird. So you
I wonder if it'll fit in there. It won't fit in there. I don't think. Shit. I wonder if I have a box here. I might need to work that out. I could make a box for it easily, actually.
Make a box?
Yeah, just take 2 boxes, cut them up, and manufacture a 3rd box using tape. The 2-day EU summit is over, bringing to close a busy week for UK Prime Minister Theresa May, who is now no longer longer going to be the Prime Minister, forced down after a vote of no confidence in a situation surrounding Brexit. Yet another deal that got voted into existence because of anti-immigration.
Damn.
Basically, Brexit, the people who voted them out don't want the dirty Frenchmen, the dirty brown people, the dirty, you know what I mean? The same logic we were talking about earlier about a chosen or higher people is what forced Brexit to happen. And the vote was really close. Did you know that? The vote was very close.
Yeah.
It was like 4 percentage points, 52-48 or
It's crazy.
51-49. And now it's all clunky. It's not good for them economically,
Oh no, it's so bad.
right? Unless they make a special relationship with the United States, which they can't do until they leave. So, all right, we're going to take a look at this. This is just ended. So half an hour ago. One of the great things about the AntiClimactic Nonshow is because it's a live stream, even though none of you are watching it as a live stream, which is what's making me crazy. Because I could just be producing the show and it'd be so much better. Instead, you guys aren't watching the live stream, you're watching the clips. But what I'll do is leave this at the front of this clip. We're going to quickly hit you with half an hour ago, Theresa May finished talking in Brussels, and we have an analysis from the BBC's Adam Fleming, who's the Brussels reporter. Theresa May's mission to Brussels has not been a failure. She has written a written statement from her 27 fellow leaders reconfirming really, that the Irish backstop is an insurance policy which would only ever be temporary. If the backstop is activated, then the EU would use their, quote, best endeavors to negotiate a trade deal, which would mean it could be deactivated. So this is, oh man, this is complicated. That wording is crucial, say British officials, because it means the UK could refer the EU to the independent arbitration panel established in the Brexit Treaty if London felt that Brussels was moving too slowly. The EU dropped a commitment to look for further ways to help the UK, which means there won't be a formal process to find them. But it doesn't mean the search couldn't happen informally or in private or at the last minute. The problem is that these commitments are unlikely to impress Mrs. May's harshest critics. And they certainly wouldn't fit on the side of the bus as reasons to sign up for her Brexit deal. What have we learned today? This afternoon has seen press conferences held by May, the European Council President Donald Tusk, European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker, as well as other EU leaders. Here's what we learned from their statements. Britain will have further talks with the EU in coming days about how to obtain, quote, further assurances that could persuade MPs to vote in favor of her withdrawal agreement. There is, quote, work to do, and talks on clarification will continue. It's not possible to reopen the agreement to alter the backstop provisions. Theresa May and Mr. Juncker had a, quote, robust discussion in which she was clear that the UK needed firmer assurances the backstop can't become permanent. Jean-Claude Juncker. He said when he referred to the word nebulous, something that sparked a bit of a to-do between him and Mrs. May, he was talking about the overall state of the debate in Britain and not the UK Prime Minister himself or itself or herself. They've written himself. The BBC in the 21st century still can't get their pronouns right. And everybody's complaining about us in California trying to change the way we think about gender by getting them right. And I don't know what to even do with that information. It's so maddening to me. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. But I have a quote. My son has a friend who prefers to be referred to as they and not he or she. It's a thing we've now learned to do in California. It's cool. I don't understand why you people have to resist even that. You know, the whole thing is to make the language better, or to make the system better, or to make the country better by adapting and by changing and by evolving to present knowledge, not to grip with your fingernails so tight to the past that you're unable and unwilling to let young people like Nico here run the show.
Yeah.
Not that he wants to run the show, but I'd rather he was running the show. You know what I'm saying?
Not this show.
There's a non-show, so I don't want you running the non-show. I want you running the show. Actually, you come to the non-show so you can go run the show. That's what I would like you to achieve. If I could be reading papers about Nico running the show, I'd be quite happy. Okay, Juncker says European leaders have, quote, the highest respect for Mrs. May. He described her as a friend. Okay, Donald Tusk. The EU has treated Mrs. May with more respect than many British MPs. There is no mandate for any further negotiations. German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Britain has to take the next steps. The 27 member states have given assurances and their position is on the table. Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. Mrs. May's deal is dead in the water. DUP leader Arlene Foster. Mrs. May should stand up and not roll over to EU leaders. So it sounds like an overall discussion that has come to yet another no conclusion about how the Brexit is really supposed to happen. What they ought to do is vote again. And I guarantee you the vote would be like 76% would say stay in the EU. I bet if they did it again, I don't know what polls are. We should look up a poll. I'm going to do that real quick. Polling, UK, Brexit, referendum again, or second. If there was another referendum, results from 48. I love the internet. See, look, that's amazing. You have grown up in a world where that's just, I have a thought, I'll just look it up. I had to grow up in a world where I would write those thoughts down in a journal, right? And then I would go to the library. I would spend like time reading all this material about it to figure out what had happened. I wouldn't have stuff that happened this morning. That everything I just read was 30 minutes old.
Yeah, I know, that's ridiculous.
Okay. If there was another referendum on Britain's membership of the EU, how would you vote? Here's it from 48 polls. This is on whatukthinks.org. Whatukthinks.org. This is fascinating. From the 30th of June of 2016 until the 12th of the 6th of December 2018, so 3 days ago. This is a chart. And at the moment, Kantar has 36 remain, 33 leave. YouGov has 47% would stay remain. Three, 4, 5. There's not a single one of these, even the ones that are lower than the mean. Here's one. There's one poll that's 40 and 40 and 20 undecided. Look, there's only one poll that's equal. All the rest remain. There's not a single poll since November, since October, going further back now. Yeah, there's no instance. So the referendum was politically charged, racially biased, pushed by media that might have been manipulated by the Russians, by the way. We don't even know whether or not they were actively involved in that because what they're doing with Facebook and with the internet is global. Why wouldn't they push things the way they wanted? They should have another referendum. I'm an American. I don't know if you guys don't give a shit what I think, but I'm also an Indian, and I know you don't give a shit about what I think. And also, I'm glad we kicked your ass out of my country because we wouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. You should elect more Indians over there, is what you ought to do. Can you control that? You got temper control? That's sweet.
Just like a little DJ app. I'm just looping shit, basically.
I like it.
Yeah.
We've achieved the goal, dude. We're 2 minutes from achieving the goal. The goal of the AntiClimactic Nonshow is to stay on for 1 hour at a minimum. Most days have been an hour and 17, an hour and 12, an hour and 15. I did an hour and a half one day.
Time goes by fast.
Well, with another person, it definitely is. When it's just in me in here, I'm really boring. That's why cutting it up is working, because people don't want to see me sit here and just BS for an hour. Done.
It's not good.
It's dope looking. I like the colors involved. Oh, the yellow lights are tweaking the color a little.
Way more red.
Collage happening. Yeah, way more red in here. Some dizzle collage happening here, folks.
Real low.
I like it. Everybody would say remain. Everybody in the UK would say remain. That's amazing.
I would.
Yeah, but then why are we billions of dollars are in limbo over a discussion that has happened in a window of time? It's not. we're not living in normal times because stuff explodes
Yeah, exactly.
that shouldn't.
Yeah,
It should have been like there should have been calmer minds who went, hold it, wait a minute, what are we about to do? Let's take another vote, or something. Instead, I don't know.
I mean, same can be said for us though.
Anywhere.
Our country, like some dumb shit's just happening. It's like how do we get here? How did we get here?
Well, I am excited about the net that is tightening around the president. I mean, he's now clearly going to be facing criminal investigation.
What
So,
happens after that?
well, Pence is going to go with him. That's for sure because Pence is complicit. So if he's done, he's done. The Republicans will put up somebody who I don't know who's very strong. I don't think they're going to be very strong. There's not a great Democrat. They're going to put.
They all suck. Everyone.
They're going to push someone like I don't know, Kamala Harris. You are watching the AntiClimactic Nonshow with your hosts. It is 10 a.m. in Los Angeles, 1 p.m. in New York, 6 in the evening in the UK, 5 in the morning in Australia, 3, probably asleep in Tokyo, huh? 3 a.m. This program takes place every day for at least an hour. We've just finished our first hour. We're listening to tunes provided by Nico today, who is also doing some collage and reading the papers, talking about Brexit a little bit, and grooving out is what's happening. Is it groovy in there? Give it up. We should show them the sampler. You're like, it's no fucking speaker!
Cool looking thing, though.
Dude, I want to play with that thing so badly right now.
Alien machine.
Let's wrap the show and go pick up some cables and come back and play with it. You know what I mean? We need a way to
With what?
I don't know.
Big speaker. I mean, I have headphones. So we need. Also, just need an SD. You have an SD card?
That's what I'm talking about. Let's figure out another solution. You know what I mean? I want to replace this anyway. So I'm open to doing that. I want to go to that the Bose outlet store. By St. Martin's. Curious about that spot.
It's all like, well, they're starting to get all worn down and
Let's get a software. I'm sure there's got to be a single speaker solution you can buy or pair or something. I don't know. We got to figure out a way to.
shit. I mean, all I need
Does that have? What is it? What other? Does it have a USB?
just RCAs.
Where can we find some old RCA speakers around here? Does that record shop have them?
I don't think they sell speakers.
But is there a thrift shop down here that has some old RCA speakers? Because that would be rad. We just plug them right in. We need an amp. Does it have an amp? So the level will be really soft. What do you use? Headphones?
Yeah, I just have. Yeah, I just use headphones. I don't even have speakers at home. I mean, wish I had an SD so I could show you some shit. I can still show you.
I'm trying to think, where is an SD in this room? I think there's one in the car. I'm trying to remember, I have an SD card for something. I have 2 or 3 of them laying around. I'm trying to remember where they are and what they're. They might be behind here. Figure it out. There's hella material in there. Plum.
I'm sure you some good next
Little killer, so I can listen, you're saying. So you're gonna perform. I'm not. Nico's not gonna be performing for an audience of one. Which is pretty cool. Oh yeah.
It's got cool things.
Ow. Oh yeah, man.
That thing just done?
Here. Use these. It'll be so much easier. Oh, you mean for this?
Yeah, I think it just died.
That's cool. Here, I'm gonna. Here, kill the Bluetooth on that, and I'll go to here with it. And we can,
It's looping.
Is it? That's cool. Audio shenanigans! It's so much fun. I love this stuff.
It's trippy. It's
Yeah.
really weird. hearing the conversations from like a minute ago.
Wow, that is cool sounding. Da 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 da. Oh 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 oh. So that's just live. It's not storing anything.
No.
So if you had an SD, you'd plug it in, you could store the content, then
Yeah,
you
you
could
can record it.
edit.
Yeah, whatever you want.
That's bad.
Yeah. Fucking
Here,
tight.
play it. Do your playing. Play your gaming. Game your gamage. You have space? You good?
Everything's all backwards.
That is really cool. Hi, welcome, viewer. This is the AntiClimactic Nonshow with your hosts. It's 12 minutes past the hour of 1 o'clock in the afternoon in New York City. It is 10:12 in the morning in 10:13 now in Los Angeles. We are here at the AntiClimactic Nonshow, a live stream on YouTube. And usually we go about an hour. We're about a few minutes into our second hour now. The context is that things happen. Our problem today is that we don't have a speaker for the unit that we're sampling with, and so we're playing around with audio, but you cannot hear that. So what we're going to do is try to figure out a way to resolve that issue. In the meanwhile, I'm going to hit you guys with something else, because I don't need to be, watching the chat window at the moment is the only way to contact us, so feel free, viewer, to say hello. I'm going to try to find something real quick that I want Nico to hear, and it can be coming out of there while he's doing the goofing around, and then you can also be cool chilling. And that is the project from 2005 called the First Contact Project. Now, the First Contact Project is the idea of one day the machines will take over, and AI and their birth or their existence will have parameters, and they'll look back and we'll look back and we'll all ask ourselves about first contact with machines. That day will come. So when it comes, why can I not see the playlists? It's really annoying sometimes. When that day comes, will we remember? Will we remember our first contact with a machine? Is a question. So I interviewed a bunch of people of all different ages in Japan and California and elsewhere, and of all different experiences. And this is what they said. First Contact Project onto Noir TV. First Contact Project is a project I did in 2000. This is me describing it. See, look, that's the studio when I did. So I've done this before. I've produced like this before. This was how it was in Cali, in Oakland. Oh my God, look how much younger I look right there. But that's that same, this is like, I don't know, 2000, this was called Noir TV, North Oakland Independent Radio.
That's it.
North Oakland Independent Radio, Noir TV was what that was. Alright, so this is the First Contact Project on Noir TV, but I'm going to add it to this. Why is this not working? Did we kill it? Did you disconnect? You have to disconnect
Yeah, I
something.
turned off my Bluetooth.
Oh, there it is. Did you hear that sound? That was it. Oh my God, it's so weird. We're dictated to by just beeps and bloops, and we all know what they mean, and we just keep moving. This digital deal needs to be more carefully. I think you connected again.
I just turned Bluetooth off.
Okay, now I'm good. There it is. All right, so this is.
Racing team basically was about 7 per even PC conceptually,
All right, so this is the First Contact Project
when I'm sitting
on AntiClimactic Nonshow, and I'm putting this here
without further ado, here's Tam and Son.
because-
And you'll hear the rest of the interviews while we're taking care of this. You can help me with this? Okay.
That's my
great.
son.
Stay there for a second.
Alright. Okay, so this is the first contact project. It's an audio thing only. I'm going to roll it out of that speaker while we're hanging out. That will give viewers who join us a chance to have something to listen to, and then we can talk over it if we want to. This is the first time you ever saw, touched, heard about a computer, and I'm asking people in the 90s up until I think 2000 something, and so their memories are what we're going to listen to. The first is Tamin's son, who's an extremely deep into computing guy. So
First contact was about 76, 77, Yokohama, Japan, at the Honda plant. Punch cards. Punch cards? Crazy. Huge machines and all these little white cards with little holes going down the lines, making all these clicking sounds. 6 years old, don't understand what the hell they were doing. My uncle had to explain to me because he was a research engineer for Honda's racing, Formula One racing team. Basically, what they were crunching is the coefficient of drag of certain chassis for the Honda team for the F1 circuit that year. Fast forward to Fairfax, Virginia. Commodore Amiga 1000. First love of PC era.
oh man, I remember those.
Programming C back in the days. C language. Audio visual was the king back in the days. You know, 512 or 256 VGA native. 84 Arlington, Virginia. Amiga 1000. Back up. So there's like Atari, Commodore 64, Commodore. Okay, Atari 2600.
All right, I'm gonna take a pause on this, which is killer that we can actually do that. Continue the discussion now. So you're how old? Do you mind?
21.
You're 21. I'm 51. So the 30 years between us, we're going back to 1984 when I was 17, and he's describing he's a little younger than me, so he was like 13. And he's an Asian kid who's half Japanese and half Chinese, and he's moved to Florida, and computing is just starting. Like, there's no computers. There's no personal computers at that time. You follow me?
Yeah.
They don't exist, right?
Yeah.
And so we were all getting these things you could play with. And he was the geek, supercomputer geek in his town, is who we're listening to, from 1984, okay?
That stuff.
And stories are amazing.
It was cool, but you know, it was just all games, so I had to step up a little bit. So 84, purchased an Amiga 1000 from a family computing center in Northern Virginia.
Oh, I remember to wear it.
What attracted me to the Amiga 1000 was the C interface programming. You can pretty much tell the Amiga what to do. As far as audio video wise, there's no other. The Amiga 1000 is a king. You can hook up a camera to it. You can do audio, AV editing. To this day, TV stations still use Amiga 1000 and Amiga line to do, AV editing.
That's in 2005.
Okay, 85, I upgraded the Amiga from 256 kilobytes to 512 kilobytes. That cost me $450 back in fucking 84. You know how much?
Listen to this.
I'm talking about weeks of allowance money and the money I save and the amount of hustling I have to gather to bump up my machine to like 256 to I was 14 years old. So how I was hustling was buying concert tickets, scalping at concerts, and buying beer, selling to people at school, and selling porn to my schoolmates.
Selling porn.
Because I needed to upgrade my Commodore 1000 so I could encode my video faster, have the speed recognition faster.
So this is an era when porn wasn't like it is now,
Yeah.
right?
It was.
So he was getting that material for them in order to get more gear, in order to continue doing this production of his, like,
After that,
playing with stuff they
college
wanted to do.
time and, IBM machines and 88 processors, and then the PC, Unix,
We
So
come back to him.
pretty old. And then back then Windows was on 2.1.
Windows 2.1.
That's insane.
So these are all interviews like this.
That's pretty cool.
Continuing now with the First Contact Project, part 2. Hang on, I'm trying to find just the interviews. I wish I had
The A
these.
and block that out. So, I mean,
This.
these other geeks are in front of me, and they're never going to let me use this thing.
So this
They
is
say,
a guy who
And
programmed
then follow
with
that up with a few
with
moves. So yeah, the first.
this is a guy who's a patent lawyer, and he is extremely successful. His brother invented Doom. You know the video game
His
Doom?
brother invented Doom.
Yeah.
Damn.
And he is an inventor himself, and he's a programmer, and he wrote patch code for the guy who invented Netscape,
Shit.
Mark Andreessen. And I didn't know that till this interview with him. And this is 2005 as well, I believe. So
this deck of cards home, and I started to like write.
he's talking
you
about
gotta, use these punch cards.
he's talking about
I can't touch it. This other
82
console thing.
or something.
So yeah, the First Contact Project on Noir TV for the first time. That's cool.
And on
I'm all excited to use this computer, and the computer's there. I see it. The console thing, but I can't touch it. Because these other geeks are in front of me, and they're never going to let me use this thing. They say, "Oh yeah, if you want to use it, you gotta use these punch cards." Well, they're not even punch cards. They're like these computer cards that you used to see in the '60s, but you gotta like black out the numbers. And so that was the way I was able to like program something. Is I took this deck of cards home, and I started to like write like instructions by blocking out character by character. Like if I wanted to make an A, I'd have to go find the A and block that out. So I mean, it's really painful. So I finally finished my little program that was supposed to like add numbers together or something like that. And I bring it in, and I stick it in this machine after they let me get to it, late in the hour. And it goes chunk, 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 and it reads everything in, and it's all wrong. I mean, because it's like, the thing's not very precise. And so it's like, if I make one little smudge or make the circle the wrong way, it just doesn't detect it. And so I'm looking at this gibberish, and I'm feeling like,
I don't get that.
this is not fair. This is the only computer in the whole school, and why do these guys get to tell me that I can't touch the damn thing? It's basically just a bunch of kids in a room, no adult supervision,
things.
and I'm going to start using it, because it should be for everybody, and I should have equal time. So I just get there earlier than they do the next day, and I actually use this thing, and
Nerds.
from then on it was like this war between like me and the main guy, and the other people were kind of his followers.
Okay, this is a great story. So he's talking about this Russian kid who's keeping him out of the computer room in the very earliest days. And what it tells me more and more is like when I watched Silicon Valley, we were talking about that the other day. That's a show by boys for boys about a boys club in Silicon Valley. That's how it felt. And then I was realizing a lot of these shows are being written by women and directed by women. And the point is that Silicon Valley's that way.
Yeah.
Not the fucking
Yeah,
show,
that's cool.
but Silicon Valley's that way. And then I started going, well, now Silicon Valley's that way. Wow. Everything has been invented and made by a bunch of boys who behave like this with the first computer. You can't get in there. I'm going to trick you. Da, da, da. Listen to these stories he's talking about from that day in relation to this.
But he didn't like me anymore. Yeah, and he was actually this brilliant guy. He was writing a chess program. He played chess. And so he knew that any little dinky thing I was doing as a new user was never going to be anywhere near as good as what he was doing. I can't remember his name. But he was like, he had a Russian background. He was like American born, but his was like a Russian name. Karov or something like that. I can't remember exactly. The weird thing about it is we each had our little accounts with passwords, and I found out like way later after I stopped going to that room that his password was my last name. This is like, he would do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he would like try to like whatever I was doing, he would try to make it more difficult for me. He'd like sabotage, like stuff that nerds think about. Like we would try to steal each other's passwords or leave the machine in a state where it'd be difficult for somebody else. I mean, it's all BS. But anyway, that was the environment that I started to learn how to program.
How many computers have you used from that day to today, or owned? Could you even fathom a guess?
Well, I was programming computers for a good 7 years professionally, and before that, as a kid, I was just doing it for fun. So I'm gonna guess like 50 or 60. I mean, I have probably 8 right now in my house. I stopped getting rid of the old ones because I noticed this trend where the newer operating systems and software computers are less private. You know, they have, like, they didn't used to have machine IDs until like the early 90s, where now they can figure out each CPU has got a number in it that people can read. So they know, and they can track that back to a machine that I bought, for example. So I don't have privacy. So, but they didn't start doing that until a certain point. So I have my old machines, and if I think, yeah, if I ever want to, be anonymous, I'll use that old machine like that.
Right, so that's what's fascinating. Charlie is saying, this is in 2005, this is 13 years ago. He's going, well, and now we live in a world where there is none of that. There's no privacy. This machine, it's a Chromebook. The Chromebook is designed solely to be connected in a way that is unfathomable. That machine, the one I always play the music off of, is disconnected from the internet, right? As I've said many times on the show, because I want to have that machine not have all my content on it or be feeding stuff from the terabyte drive that I have that goes into that. I want some way to keep it away from my phone and the Chromebook.
Yeah.
And so this is Charlie talking about that in terms that can't even exist anymore.
No, that's crazy.
So when we talk about AI taking over, or about us becoming one machines, this project is a lot of fun. I mean, there's a lot of weird, interesting...
User system through that machine.
Yeah, like I can still get on the internet by dialing up because there's no Ethernet card in these. But yeah, I regret getting rid of like the machines I had in the 80s. And I had an Apple II for a while. I had the TRS-80 that you mentioned in your chapter. I programmed both of those machines. I programmed tons of IBMs. I programmed mainframes, mini frames, mini computers, everything. That was Maine Township East in Illinois. And people probably don't think about Illinois as being, a cutting edge computer, but that's
Well, Mark Andreessen, right? I mean,
they all those internet guys. By the way, I wrote patch for them too. He
wrote
came
patch
from the University of Illinois.
for Mark Andreessen at Champaign-Urbana, where it's the UNIVAC.
It's also where they were developing a lot of the early computer components, like the UNIVAC was developed. I think it was the UNIVAC. The ELIAC was definitely developed there, and also, I mean, it's kind of known in the computer industry as being like a think tank, and talented computer people come out of there. And that's why it's mentioned in 2001: A Space Odyssey, the HAL computer that's getting shut down. It was made in Urbana, Illinois, which is the University of Illinois, which is where I went to school, and a lot of these people come from.
My first memory of a computer was, I must have been 6 or 7, and we were visiting friends of my parents in North Carolina, actually, and he was a professor and had this little Macintosh, I don't know what, it was about this big.
It's a Canadian woman.
Maybe 1985 or so, 6. And he showed me the mouse and how it worked, and I drew pictures using the mouse as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old would draw. And then they showed me this program that when you type, it could speak. It was actually really advanced for what it was, 1986. So you could type and it would speak in this robot voice, and that was really cool at the time, I remember. And then they printed out on whatever kind of printer, dot matrix, I suppose, my drawing. And that was a really big deal. So that was my first computer.
They're all funny.
It's pretty cool.
Something that mixed up.
And how many machines do you think you phoned?
Dave has Macs, I have PCs, so...
Oh yeah,
And
the
this
whole
was one
Mac
of the
PC
workshops he was
relationship
speaking
thing.
about. And again, completely text-based, but the big deal was he showed us what...
So in 05, you couldn't even open files. I mean, that was the window where you could. There were still. Well, I'm a Mac user, so you can't read this. So you have to transfer. Like it's a different universe, and that's 13 years ago. And they're all talking about in these interviews 30 or say 20 years before that, and we are all talking about on the First Contact Project this. I would love people to hear this.
Search for anything, like a recipe for...
She's talking about the first time you could hear.
Types the same.
She'd ever heard of the internet. This is great.
Based, but the big deal was he showed us, well, you can search for anything, like a recipe for banana split, and so he types this in and it comes up with a recipe, and everybody goes and ahs. I don't know what the search engine was.
Text.
Maybe Gopher or something.
It was Gopher. She's talking about Gopher, which was a text
I
thing,
wasn't
but you
as
could be
impressed
connected to
as I
someone
probably should
by
have been.
text.
Because this was a big step, but I didn't quite grasp the enormity of this.
And
I
now,
remember the pre-Windows environment. In fact, I was sort of refreshed
good,
with
man.
it because my computer,
It's wild.
one of the computers...
they're also good.
Because these things are really expensive. DOS stuff.
The Commodore was like,
so bad for me because
My son is 3 and he walks into the interview and he goes, "I got a popsicle." It's really great.
it's, you know, the sarcastic, you know, like typing to this
Some of these
day,
are kind of long.
but they
Yeah, that one's been going on.
seems more.
Was the Commodore VIC.
This guy's great. That's good because he's
The
followed up.
first time.
This is SF Art Institute, and I'm there with Rigo. We're doing a project, big project, and the kid is helping us. Well, the kid who's the head of the lab, of the computer lab at SF Art Institute. So this would be 2006, roughly, maybe 7. So now you get a kid that's an art student, but also computer savvy, and just listening to him, I'm thinking about a Commodore guy, how it helps creativity.
Had
You know?
experienced was the
A lot, for sure.
Commodore VIC-20. And I remember as my parents were arguing that I was watching too much TV, so they got rid of the television and they bought a computer, the VIC-20. Oh, that had to be like 1980.
Sorry, you're bored. You want to play guitar?
1984.
I'm just tired.
Back
I made you get up early.
and it ran software. You had a cassette, audio cassette that you'd store data on, like
After work.
you'd store data on a CD-ROM nowadays.
Sounds like
And it was an audio cassette, and it had this this cassette player, but it
I remember these. Too.
wrote and read data off of audio cassettes.
Anyway, you can look at this link.
And we would get
But
this magazine.
I'll send you a link. You can also find the link on the YouTube page, and we'll do that later. Let's wrap the show today. The non-show, I mean. Thank you, Nico.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Show up anytime you want. He's always working, or he's asleep, because he's been working from till late at night. And next week will be week 4,
1 month.
and then we might wrap it up because the boy arrives.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, no more Soul Limbo. We're not going to do that. I'm definitely going to do original noise and music from now on. I don't want to have any copyright claims anymore.
Yeah.
The show's not making money, so I don't understand
That
how
doesn't
that
make
even.
sense. That doesn't make any sense. YouTube is so censored now with
Well,
everything.
Bingo! Now we're talking about the regulation of the internet, which we could. I'll stay on to do that
It's yeah.
because okay,
That's
DCMA. All right, let's look up DCMA. Oh, by the way, I want to just. This is going to go up on the wall. This is a New Yorker cover. I have at least 3 friends who have made covers for the New Yorker over the last 30 years. One of them is Eric Drucker, who all New Yorkers know, and I've known for many, many years. I interviewed him when he first got back from Palestine. You can hear that on one of these websites. But Drucker made this in 2016 during the, or 2015 for the cover of the magazine. And I remember taking the magazine, I was reading the magazine at a bar down here, and a guy going, "That's how it should be," when he saw the cover of it. So this is
Down here.
mom and dad, I guess, and they're shopping in the grocery store for, groceries and stuff, but also other items as well. So this is one by Drucker from 2015. I'm going to put it on the wall because
It's your boy.
I know Eric. He's a good guy. He's a rad
That's
dude.
pretty cool though.
And I'm going to find a place for this. Well, not right now, but I just want to let you know why I was ripping that thing off. Okay, so DCMA. DCMA. No, I don't want the Defense Contract Management Agency. Look what comes up very first thing. Defense Contract Management Agency, an agency of the United States federal government reporting to the Undersecretary of Defense. Wow. Amazing. Why am I...
Copyright. DCMA copyright.
Yeah, but that's amazing. I didn't even know this.
Yeah, I mean.
Look how that immediately becomes... That in itself seems like an intersection of controlling the methodology, right?
The militarization. DMCA.
Oh, that's why I did it backwards.
But still.
It's DMCA. See how already I screwed this up being stupid.
Copyright.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're now going to read this aloud from Wiki, like we've been doing during the show when we're trying to learn stuff. And in the context of what I'm doing, DMCA, not DCMA, DMCA. DMCA. What I'm doing here, what we're doing here, is free. I'm paying for the internet. There's no FCC control of this. I can say fuck, shit, cocksucker, anus. I can do and say anything I want. I can show pictures of anything I want if I changed my settings, which would be adult content or not safe for work. And if I made There's some things I might have to do to protect children because of COPA. You know COPA, the Children's Online Protection Act.
Mm.
So you don't want to do anything like that. I don't want to be yelling cocksucker anyway. But the point is, I can. The First Amendment gives me the absolute right. Do we need to read that too? Always in my studio there is a copy of the Constitution. Always. It is rule number 1 in every studio, in my opinion, in the United States of America, because if the cops come to the door, you want to be able to say, I'm pretty sure I have the right to do or say anything I want in this room, and you don't, because you're standing here without a warrant. But here's the Constitution of the United States of America. Let's go ahead and read the First Amendment of the Constitution, shall we?
Let's do it.
I love reading it.
It's a good-
Occasionally it pops up over there because of the 1998 show at the Brooklyn Museum of Art, when Rudy Giuliani tried to censor art. I went in protest and I printed this, painted it on the back of my shirt, wore a tie, button-down shirt with this painted on the back, and it said, fuck Rudy. And I walked into the museum. That'll appear occasionally over there, but we're going to read it aloud. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. What that means is, by definition, everything I say in this room, everything I ever say or do, or anyone in here says or does, cannot be restricted by you or anyone else. No lawyer, no judge, no one. No one. That is what I signed up for, and that is what he was born into, and that's what the USA is supposed to promise. So let's start there. Copyright claims now are being put on what I've done and am doing. And so I'm having a problem with that. So let's take a look at what that means. DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. I just said I'm cool with following COPA, right? I don't want children to be affected adversely by my behavior. So cool, all right, I can see why that would need to be there. Can you see why this would need to be here? The Digital Millennium Copyright Act is a 1998 U.S. copyright law that implements 2 1996 treaties of the World Intellectual Property Organization, the WIPO. It criminalizes production and dissemination of technology, devices, or services intended to circumvent measures that control access to copyrighted works, commonly known as digital rights management, or DRM. It also criminalizes the act of circumventing an access control, whether or not there is actual infringement of copyright itself. That's where we are. If I play Van Morrison on the radio, or if I play William Devon on my guitar, that's where I am. I'm in the act of circumventing an access control, whether or not I'm infringement of the copyright itself. The MCA heightens the penalties for copyright infringement on the internet. Passed on 12th October of 1998 by a unanimous vote in the Senate, signed into law by Bill Clinton on October 28th of 1998, the DMCA amended Title 17 of the U.S. Code. So that's the law. Now, let's talk about
That doesn't make sense.
exemptions. No, it makes all the sense. But this is what's going to allow us to do whatever we want. Okay? So you all accept that. Miscellaneous provisions, statutory licenses. Hang on. DMCA. The thing that allows me to show a movie and in a critical context where there's no money being made is covered here in the DMCA. Like a professor or a person at a TED Talk. Okay? That's covered. Now, I want to find that segment so we can talk about it and say that's why I should be able to play whatever music I want in here
You're not gonna strike.
and not be. Right now, there are bans on 2 or 3 of my videos simply because I played a song, and that can't happen. This has to be international,
That's why that doesn't make sense to me. It's just like
but there's a way. I'm saying it's protected here. I'm reading the header, but it's protected. So hang on, we got to find the section that's about protecting free speech. Probably stick that in. Be faster, right? DMCA protect free speech. Easier way to find it. Sorry. 15 years under the anti-circumvention provisions. Wow, look, all the opposite these people are saying. What is this? EFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation. Join, give money. It's December. It's time for all your charitable donations. Unintended consequences of 15 years under the DMCA, written in March of 2013. This is an old and outdated copy. Let's visit the most recent version. Even better. I love the EFF. Give them money. The Unintended Consequences Archive. 16 years under the DMCA.
That was 4 years ago. Dang. Got a whole PDF.
Yep. This document collects reported cases where the anti-circumvention provisions of the DMCA have been invoked not against pirates, but against consumers, scientists, and legitimate competitors. That's us.
Us.
Thank you. That's us. I am a consumer, a scientist, and a legitimate competitor. And I'm making no money. This is not to make money.
But that is fair use.
But I thought it was supposed to protect fair use.
It's supposed to, but it doesn't.
I know, that's fine. That's
I
interesting.
guess that's
That's
what they're.
news to me.
That's what they're trying.
That's
to
news to me.
That's what they're trying to tell you right there. What did it say?
It's the same as the 2013 one, basically with some similar. Shall I read? You want to read this aloud? I want to check out fair use protections before doing that, because this is just EFF telling us.
The FUPA.
This isn't print. Fair use. This is about fair use in print, but in the most general sense, a fair use is any copying of copyrighted material done for a limited and transformative purpose. Limited. And transformative purpose, such as to comment upon, criticize, or parody a copyrighted work. Such uses can be done without permission from the copyright owner. In other words, fair use is a defense against a claim of copyright infringement. If your use qualifies as a fair use, then it would not be considered an infringement. So what is a transformative use? If this definition seems ambiguous or vague, be aware that millions of dollars in legal fees have been spent attempting to define what qualifies as a fair use. There are no hard and fast rules, only general guidelines and varied court decisions, because the judges and lawmakers who created the fair use exception did not want to limit its definition. Like free speech, they wanted it to have an expansive meaning that could be open to interpretation. Most fair use analyses falls into two categories. One, commentary and criticism, which is what I'm doing. Or two, parody, which is what, the Life of Brian, right? Or satire. If you are commenting upon or critiquing a copyrighted work, for instance, writing a book review. Hang on, why am I sneezing today? It might be the scent. I got the double wick candle now. I feel like it's producing. Where did you blow out one of them?
I don't know.
Oh shit.
Well,
Well, that didn't work. It's a long.
maybe that's why.
It's an hour and 45. This is This is the
wait.
longest episode of the AntiClimactic Nonshow we've had.
Wow.
By far. By about 10 minutes. Okay. If you are commenting upon or critiquing a copyrighted work, for instance, quoting a few lines, some examples of commentary and criticism include. Man, it's still sneezing. I'm gonna get rid of that real quick. So these are some examples of protected commentary and criticism. Quoting a few lines from a Bob Dylan song. Quoting a few lines from a Bob Dylan song in a music review. Okay, that makes sense. Summarizing and quoting from a medical article on prostate cancer in a news report. Copying a few paragraphs from a news article for use by a teacher or student in a lesson. Or copying a portion of a magazine article for use in a related court case. Okay, so this is from Stanford, and they're talking about fair use, and it's a good summative statement. Stanford Law produces this, stanford.edu. So, quoting a few lines from a song. How about playing the whole song? How about if I say, okay, I'm going to critique 1965, And one thing was there was a song by Bob Dylan. So I'm going to play the whole song to talk about the year 1965, and this is a poet from then. If I play the whole song, shouldn't I be? I'm not making money off it. I'm using it for critique and commentary, and it fits everything in the
Is it
thing,
considered
right?
fair use?
My guess is that that would be fine.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean,
each of these is a step up. We're going to watch. We're going to make now the case, right? All the way up to Van Morrison saying, you cannot use my song. And not only can you not use my song, even though it's an audio element that's playing out of the speaker and there's all this other stuff going on, you might be dancing, you might be cutting stuff up, you might be showing other things, that song can prevent all of that from being seen by anyone in the world. That has happened. The live stream is blocked from that one episode where I've been testing songs, right? What can I use, what can I not use? And the biggest reason why I'm doing that is because I protest the notion that, and they have, you must have seen these, as an audio producer, Nico must have seen these, banks and banks of stuff you can use. Yeah. Make your movie, make your video of your family and your kids, and you can use this bouncy sound, or this sad song, or this, make your funeral thing and have a sad, it's all just, well, the point is that it's, they've licensed somehow a mechanism where they're making money for you to use that, and you're not violating anything.
That's
but
crazy.
I can't play a Van Morrison song and talk about the year it was written.
It's crazy. It just doesn't make
Strikes
sense.
me as we might have found what EFF is calling the unintended consequences of the DMCA. Right? That's what I think we've just described.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I consistently produced material like this in the past that was not live. I just showed you Noir TV was one of them. I did one for the Giants. I did a show about the Giants for like a whole 2 years. For those, I was shooting the video, cutting it all up, making it sweet, and then at 11 o'clock, the show would be dropped. So it's pre-produced. You know what I'm saying? This is a live stream. So what happens each day, right now, I can start singing Van Morrison as loud as I want, and there's nobody can stop it. Whoever's watching can see it.
Yeah, yeah.
But the minute the show is over and the robot computer goes and finds the song, bzz, gone. So this is powerful distinction. Notice the power of the distinction here, right? Sure. So watching the show live, which none of you have done, I appreciate you fans or whatever. I mean, you're not fans because it's not a show. That's A. I gotta stop calling it a show. Anyone participating in the program or observing the program, you're in it. And, sorry, I forget where we're going with that. Where were we? I've lost my train of thought.
How people watching the show live.
Yeah, the line between that dashed line, right? Yeah. Because if you're a YouTube star right now, and again, this Nonshow has no interest in being a YouTube success. That is not the point here. The point is to use YouTube the way I want to use YouTube, which is not for money but for ideas. So in that context, this is a huge distinction between live broadcast and the chunks that you can watch after it's over. Because they can decide you can't watch the whole chunk. That Van Morrison song has killed a 1 hour, 37-minute program. Jeez. 1 hour and 37 minutes I produced in this room. Not for money, and that song was an element, and now you cannot watch the entire 1 hour and 37 minutes. I have to go into the 1 hour and 37-minute chunk, cut it into pieces, and then you can listen to those as long as the Van Morrison song doesn't appear anywhere in any chunk of those.
That's insane.
No, that's sane. That's what's happening at the moment.
No, yeah, it's just...
This is well, no, it's part of the fear people have of free information. And
that's why it's crazy. It's just absurd.
In a hyper-capitalized society, that's what's absurd.
Yeah.
It's that they've made that absurd.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. That's what I'm saying. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
So if I invite Nico here to make original music, I can do and say whatever I want and have no fear that after it's done, I don't have to edit it, nothing, right?
We'll see.
No, I guarantee you. Oh, we will see, though. There could be 3 notes in what... If you're an artist and you're out there and you're checking the boxes that say, how harsh do you want me to do this? And you're checking all the way out to that point, I think you're violating my... I should be able to sue Van Morrison. Right? I should be able to sue Van Morrison, I feel like.
Let's do it.
Well, I don't... It's a waste of my time. I don't want to sue Van Morrison. But you see my point, though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not making any money, so there's no way that anybody would take that case because I'm not suing him for anything except the intellectual capacity, the ability. So it wouldn't be Van Morrison. I have to go. EFF could sponsor me to sue the law to say that that's not a thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
But then that'll open the door for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for everyone who wants to fucking use stuff.
Right. And now now in this case it is no surprise that I'm Indian, because we copy anything we want. We do whatever the fuck we want. We've always done it. We will always do it. And people always say that. I make a joke. I say, here's how you know I'm Indian. Anytime I give anybody a bill that's larger than a 20, they go like this. I tell that joke, and I've had people go, oh, that's racist. I'm like, no, dude. There's a practical reason why people think the way they think, and it's because of their culture. And we believe something differently about ourselves, I think. And now comes the collision of the capitalized world and India's booming economy and copyright and that fundamental idea that I can say and do whatever I want. It's not law that's impeding that. I'm not, COPPA works, right? I'm not, the Online Protection Act for Children works because I'm not trying to fuck up children, right? But it's not working in the context that I should be able to sit in this room in a controlled facility using professional language and say and play and discuss anything I want, and that should be made available to everybody on the earth. That should be protected. That should be protected.
Especially since you're not making any money.
Especially if the person in question is not making any money. Correct.
Yeah. That's where it gets, like, confusing, you know? That's where it doesn't make sense. You should be able to do whatever you want in here because you're not making money. Or you don't have intentions of making money. That's where that whole thing gets blurry, you know? And
now
it doesn't really define those things either.
It doesn't. And the line is, once we stop the show, it becomes a published object. So that has different rules. Because if I died and that thing was up there defending Van Morrison as a published object, that's not right. That's not fair to Van Morrison.
Yeah.
Right? If I played Van Morrison and had a bunch of Nazi stuff and horrible negative shit around it, right? And I said, oh, I love Van Morrison. That's what he's trying to prevent, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If you think about it.
No, yeah.
Okay. Then I could get away with that if I was a crazy nutbag using that music to promote my horrible stuff while it was live,
But
like I'm doing,
it could also
right?
come from,
And then the minute it's a published object,
yeah.
the collision between the copyright's intent, the person who copyrighted their intent, and the way it's being utilized becomes legal territory that can be protected.
That's true.
So that distinction is what live radio, and why we made pirate radio, because we said, look, you can't do that. I can build a transmitter for less than $200. I can buy or make an antenna for less than $10. I can buy enough wire for less than $10, and I can go outside on my building that I own on my property, and I can climb up on the roof, and I can stick that antenna up there, and I can go downstairs, and I can put a microphone into that transmitter, and I can say shit, fuck, cunt, kill, murder, Hitler is great, Nazi, anything I want. You can elect to tune in using a receiver, or you can not elect to tune in receiving. This was the fundamental thing we were trying to say in the pirate radio movement, which got exploded by the internet because pirate radio becomes immaterial once you have the internet.
Yeah, definitely.
The way it is now.
Right.
But the internet is controlled in the manner that it is now.
So it's
I can't make my own wireless projecting device into the internet. I have to have AT&T or Verizon or blah, 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 blah. I can't. It's not the same as building my transmitter, sticking a thing up.
It's just a big culmination of control and censorship.
Of ideas.
Yeah.
Which is one thing we need critically right now, right?
Yeah, but
The ideas are being farmed into the academy, right? Shall we say that? They're being sent through the academy. The academy is also growing more and more controlled by corporations. So we're limiting the ability of creative thought through this. No? We're limiting creativity. That I think is...
They're trying to.
No, they're actively doing it.
Yeah.
Alright, should we read this thing now?
Yeah.
This is the EFF, Unintended Consequences. Okay, the most recent one, which was in 2014. Alright. Unintended consequences of the DMCA. A, the Digital Millennial Copyright Act. The anti-circumvention provisions of the Digital Millennial Copyright Act, codified in Section 1201 of the Copyright Act, have not been used as Congress envisioned. The law was ostensibly intended to stop copyright infringers from defeating anti-piracy protections added to copyrighted works. In practice, the anti-circumvention provisions have been used to stifle a wide array of legitimate activities. As a result, the DMCA has become a serious threat to several important public policy priorities. 1. The DMCA chills free expression and scientific research. Experience within Section 1201 demonstrates that it is being used to stifle free speech and scientific research. The lawsuit against 2600 magazines, 2600 magazine, I guess, threats against Princeton professor Edward Felton's team of researchers and prosecution of Russian programmer Dmitry Sklyarov have chilled the legitimate activities of journalists, publishers, scientists, students, programmers, and members of the public. The DMCA jeopardizes fair use, number 2, by banning all acts of circumvention and all technologies and tools that can be used for circumvention. The DMCA grants to copyright owners the power to unilaterally eliminate the public's fair use rights, as Van Morrison has done in this context. Already, the movie industry's use of encryption on DVDs has curtailed consumers' ability to make legitimate personal use copies of movies that they have purchased. 3. The DMCA impedes competition and innovation. Rather than focusing on pirates, some have wielded the DMCA to hinder legitimate competitors. For example, the DMCA has been used to block aftermarket competition in laser printer toner cartridges, garage door openers, video game console accessories, and computer maintenance services. Similarly, Apple has used the DMCA to tie its iPhone devices to Apple's own software and services. That brings us back to the CEO of Google, who testified in front of Congress this week about this very matter. The idea that the huge companies, Google and Apple, have occupied by using the DMCA against others is what that's about. It's monopolistic. This is an antitrust issue. So when we're talking about antitrust, you have to go after these entities, and to do that, one way would be to readdress the DMCA. I think that's a very smart idea. We should have the new Congress readdress the DMCA. The DMCA interferes with computer intrusion laws. The DMCA has been misused as a general purpose prohibition on computer network access, a task for which it was not designed and to which it is ill-suited. For example, a disgruntled employer uses the DMCA against a former contractor for simply connecting to the company's computer system through a VPN, a virtual private network. Okay, that makes sense. But nowadays, this is 4 years ago, they haven't updated it, and nowadays with current issues of, like the computers now, users are signing over because they want to be able to talk to the machine. They're signing over the right for these people just to take.
Right.
They're voluntarily giving away a thing that they're complaining about there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the legislative background of the DMCA. Well, folks, we've made it for the first time to 2 hours. The AntiClimactic Nonshow is 2 hours long.
2 hours.
And it is now 2 o'clock in the afternoon in New York. 7 in the evening in the UK, where Theresa May, we talked about that earlier today, has just come back from the European Union. We have been discussing computers and listening to music with Nico today, who has come to join us. And we're talking about the DMCA. This is the legislative background of the DMCA. Congress enacted the DMCA's anti-circumvention in response to 2 pressures. First, Congress was responding to the perceived need to implement obligations imposed on the U.S. by the 1996 World Intellectual Property Organization. We talked about that, the WIPO Organization Copyright Treaty. Second, as reflected in the details of Section 1201, which go well beyond anything the WIPO Treaty required, Congress was also responding to the concerns of copyright owners that their works would be widely pirated in the networked digital world. Now, when we talk on YouTube about Europe having this Article 13 in their new legislation concerning online copyright, that's what this is about. They're trying to emulate DMCA more, not less, so that European copyright holders can now, like Sky TV or Rupert Murdoch, can now grab
Right.
more through the same mechanism. Okay, so 1201 in the DMCA contains two distinct prohibitions: a ban on acts of circumvention and a ban on the distribution of tools and technologies used for circumvention. The Act prohibition, set out in Section 1201A1, prohibits the act of circumventing a technological measure used by copyright owners to control access to their works, access controls. So, for example, this provision makes it unlawful to defeat the encryption system used on DVD movies. This ban on acts of circumvention applies even where the purpose for decrypting the movie would otherwise be legitimate. As a result, the motion picture industry maintains that it is unlawful to make a digital copy of a DVD or Blu-ray disc you own for playback on your iPad or smartphone. The tools prohibitions set out in sections 1201A2 and 1201B outlaw the manufacturing, sale, distribution, or trafficking of tools and technologies that make circumvention possible. Wow, that's amazing. These provisions ban both technologies that defeat access controls, so ways to get around the DVD encryption, and technologies that defeat use restrictions imposed by copyright owners, such as copy controls. Wow. That's how he's able to do this. That's how Van Morrison is able to do this. These provisions prohibit the distribution of software that was designed to defeat CD copy protection technologies, for example. 1201 includes a number of exceptions for certain limited classes of activities, including security testing, reverse engineering of software, encryption research, and law enforcement. These exceptions have been criticized as being too narrow to be of use to the constituencies they were intended to assist. A violation of any of the Act or tools prohibitions is subject to significant civil and, in some circumstances, criminal penalties. Now, what's crazy about that is, rewind to when I was a kid, I have a tape recorder, and I go click, and I tape record music coming out of this rock show, and I go home and I put it on my tape player, and I listen to it on my tape player at home. Now, that would make that machine, the tape player, illegal.
Yep.
It would make the tape recorder illegal.
Yeah.
Why? That's not illegal. That's insane to suggest that. So why now has the digitization of the data? Oh, because now it's fluid, man. It can be recopied so easily, and transported. But that has nothing to do with me. Has nothing to do with me and my devices and what I can use them for. So this is where I get anti-capitalist.
Yeah.
Because I'm angry that capitalism is why. This has nothing to do with technology. This has nothing to do with an authoritarian Soviet government or some control power that's over my head. I am being abused, and my rights are being abused by corporations and companies who are manipulating a law which we wrote together, supposedly, to govern freedom of expression on the internet.
Yeah, that's insane.
So that's what we need. New house. The new house.
I knew that.
On this program, we talked about the new house. I want them to bring the net around the administration. Cool. I know they're going to do that. I want them to 1974 Freedom of Information. The Federal Elections Commission Act is outdated, outmoded, and desperately in need of an update. I want a new Federal Elections Commission Act to reform both the commission and laws to deal with voting. We have to fix the voting. The voting's totally insane. It's fixable. Okay? But that's what I want the new House to do. FICA. And now I want the House to address DMCA. These are three. Bang. Right out the gate. The House should be putting them forward immediately.
Important ones.
Yeah. Put the rope around the neck of the Trump so he can just... He's going to never stop, but let him just keep going with the thing around his neck. And then FICA. And then DMCA. Boom. So I'm going to write to some of you. Or you could just tune into the program, which is now 2 hours and 6 minutes today. Cool. Chilling, free expression, and scientific research. Okay, so these are longer sections with citations that are expanding on the executive summary that we described at the top of this. So they're examples of each of the things that that we read out at the top of this, the executive summary. So I'm going to let you read that yourself.
EFF.org.
That's it. EFF.
That's where it's at.
Org.
That is where it's at.
And we're going to call the show, awesome, longest episode ever. Yay. Too bad none of you watch it live yet.
Yeah.
Mwahahahahaha. evil laughter as we go up. Give me an evil laugh as we go up into this.
Oh
Oh my god. Sell it, bro.